something about it. We're not.
You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is December 2nd, 2024, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we're bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Today, we have a special show on education, and to help us with that, we have Larry Sand, who is a former teacher and founder of the California Teachers Empowerment Network. So we'll get into a little bit of that as we go through the show. He's a returning guest, so we've kind of gone through his past on previous shows, but he's a great resource on education. So that's why with the change of administration, we kind of want to understand what this might mean. Anyway, so we before we get into any of these issues, I wanted to start off with introducing the panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. Upper right-hand corner, we have our special guest, Larry Sand. And my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So we always start out the show with a Liberty quote, usually somehow related to what we're talking about. And this time we have a quote from Thomas Sowell on education. So, Leon, could you bring up the screen real quick so we can show that? I think this is particularly apt to some of the topics we're going to cover. And so he said, this is part of a longer discussion, but this excerpt says that educators who have repeatedly failed to do what they are hired to do and trained to do should take on sweeping roles as amateur psychologists, sociologists, and social philosophers seems almost inexplicable, except that they are doing it with other people's money and experimenting on other people's children. So to me, this seems so apt.
That's about it. I think we're done.
Yeah, Thomas Sowell just summarized the whole show.
Yes, quite so clearly. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Thomas Sowell is incredible. I mean, and he's still alive. He's in his 90s, and I don't know of somebody who could just crystallize a point as succinctly and better than he did. And he had a very tough childhood, as you may know. He was brought up by his older sister. He was brought up in Harlem. I think he was born in North Carolina, brought up in Harlem, had a tough childhood, but it just emerged as one of the great geniuses of our time. He really is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's. Oh, go ahead, Leon.
No, I was just going to say this man have influenced my life, at least where I stand philosophically and politically, more than anybody, more than any other living human being outside of my parents. And he have really captivated the whole sense of where we are in society. Now, in particular, in terms of education, I think it is very clear from this quote exactly the rot that is ongoing in our public schools, and where they are really and truly experimenting with our children and telling us and trying to convince our kids that they are not really boys, they should be girls, and they are not. This whole transgender issue, I mean, it's horrible. So it's and he's right. They are really experimenting with other people's kids. And this thing is, I mean, we have to stop this somehow or the other. We must, because this is really leading to the destruction of Western civilization. That's what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and as we'll get into too, I mean, the point he makes that the role we hired them to do, they're failing at miserably.
Exactly.
We're going to get into some of that as we go through the show, but let's give them more to do.
Yes,
I just think it's a good time just to bring up the point that the latest NAEP, the National Assessment of Education Progress, known as the Nation's Report Card, which is a really solid test, shows that in I think it was in 2022, 8th grade proficiency in reading was 29%. And 26% in math. That means we're raising a nation of dummies.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah.
But it's funny, we always hear about that mythical underpaid teacher. We always hear about that. But teacher pay is always rising, and our kids' quality of education is always declining. But yet, we want to continue paying people for failing at what we are hiring them to do. This is unbelievable.
Leon, that's such an important point. I mean, can you imagine in private industry, somebody like a salesman doesn't make any sales, but he gets a yearly raise anyway?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And he gets the raise regardless of whether he's selling better than his co-salesman or not. It's just all independent of that.
And teachers love to whine about not getting paid enough. What they don't realize or don't acknowledge is that they work far less than most people in private industry. They have incredible health care perks typically,
Yes.
and a budget busting pension plan. So they earn a lot more than the average American does. And they buy this line from the unions, and it's just ridiculous.
Well, and the crazy thing is, if you go to the private sector for any particular job, your success isn't capped by a union standard, and yet they all cling to the union, right? So, I mean, if you figure out a way to serve more people, you get paid more. That's just the way the market works.
Yeah, I mean, it's so obvious. And just for clarification purposes, I am I'm an abolitionist. I don't believe the government has any place, period. I mean, I'm big on school choice, but the first option to me would be get the government out of education, privatize it all. And people, oh my God, what about poor people? They're not going to be able to afford education. All right, so, on college level, we give them Pell Grants. We'll give them some money. Just we don't let people starve to death, do we? No, we give them some money so that they can go to the store and buy food. And there's no different. We don't go shopping at the government supermarket down the street. We go to the private market and they compete with each other for, quality of product and prices, etc. And why can't it be the same for schools? I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, and quite often too, the government standards actually make things worse a lot of times too. So even if it is private, if the government is saying this is the bar that you guys all have to work under, sometimes, yeah.
I mean, the government role, if not 100% out, should be like 99% out. I don't believe that private schools should be able to abuse children, but that's covered under other laws. So you just need an education department. You don't need the government in schools at all, period.
Well, and government should be, involved in normal contracts with fraud. And I mean, my gosh, our current education system is one of the biggest frauds I've ever seen.
Really?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just like Larry said. Go ahead, Larry.
It's funny, I grew up in the 60s, and in the spirit of full disclosure, I was on the left then, and we used to, battle against the government. Now the government is just ruining children.
Yes.
And it used to be the left against the government. Now the government is the left.
Yes.
Typically.
Well, we're going to get in deeper to a lot of these issues, but before we do, I just wanted to share Larry's web pages so that you can find out more about him if you get disconnected somewhere through the show. So, Leon, could you? Oh, it's up already. Never mind.
Yeah.
So, there's the California Teachers Empowerment Network. So, this is what we mentioned when we introduced him, and so this is a resource, correct, Larry, that teachers, if they want to kind of try and buck the system, this kind of offers them some resources to do that, maybe to break away from their sort of union shepherds, I guess might be the best way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, just basically, we don't take a political stance. We're a 501c3, and we just get information to teachers about their profession, union issues especially, and try to give them unvarnished truth without a slant, without political at all, as I said. And, because when teachers get the information, they get it from the school district or the government, and then their unions, which are even worse because they have their own agenda. And our main, it started this in 2006, and our main job really became teachers. How do I get out of the union? And, it used to be where you could not join a union, but you still had to pay money. And then courtesy of the Janus decision in 2018, you didn't even have to pay any money to a union. Yet still a lot of teachers don't do that, and they think the union is there to protect them. And I could do a whole hour on that, but anyway.
Okay. Well, so there's this, and a lot of the articles that we're going to touch on throughout this podcast. You can actually go find. Larry has a blog. It's on For Kids and Country. Oh, Leon, could you bring back the visual real quick again? yeah, so in fact, one of the first things we're going to talk about is his article on how will Trump handle education policy going forward. So that's kind of the biggie. You know, we just had an election, and we're hearing some fairly radical things. Good sounding radical things, not kind of the radical things coming out of California. We all cringe at. So we're going to drop into a lot of these stories, but you can actually find all these articles of Larry's up here. So definitely you can use that as a resource going forward to keep up on what's going on education. So anyways, I guess the first topic we really wanted to drop into is we've been hearing all kinds of stuff about what's going to go on with Trump, with the new Trump administration on education, and some really good things. It sounds like he's going to get rid of the Department of Education, which is getting rid of this central planner. Why do we need a national central planner? And boy, it sure hasn't been planning very well from the results that we've been seeing. But I think it's important that we kind of get this out front, what it is that Trump has been talking about for about the last year on education. So he talked about 10 points, and we're going to bring this up in a video that we sped up a little bit and edited, but it's got all the points there. So Leon, can you play KOL 1?
Here are 10 key ideas that will power our movement for great schools. First, we will respect the right of parents to control the education of their children. Second, we will empower parents and local school board to hire and reward great principals and teachers, and also to fire the poor ones, the one whose performance is unsatisfactory. They will be fired. Like on The Apprentice, you're fired. Third, we will ensure our classrooms are focused not on political indoctrination, but on teaching the knowledge and skills needed to succeed: reading, writing, math, science, arithmetic, and other truly useful subjects. Fourth, we will teach students to love their country, not to hate their country like they're taught right now. Fifth, we will support bringing back prayer to our schools. Sixth, we will achieve schools that are safe, secure, and drug-free, with immediate expulsion for any student who harms a teacher or another student. Seventh, we will give all parents the right to choose another school for their children if they want. It's called school choice. Eighth, we will ensure students have access to project-based learning experiences inside the classroom to help train them for meaningful work outside the classroom. Ninth, we will strive to give all students access to internships and work experiences that can set them on a path to their first job. They're going to be very, very successful. 10th, we will ensure that all schools provide excellent jobs and career counseling so that high school and college students can get a head start on jobs and careers best suited to their God-given talents. This is how we will ensure a great education for every American child. And one other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and sending all education and education work and needs back to the states. We want them to run the education of our children because they'll do a much better job of it. You can't do worse. We spend more money per pupil by 3 times than any other nation, and yet we're absolutely at the bottom. We're one of the worst.
And so, yeah, he's got all of his points out there. The one I like the most is obviously at the end, getting rid of the Department of Education so that Washington is having less direction. And before we jump into those points too, there was a meme that's going around, and I think it's just kind of clever, and I wanted to show it. So Leon, can you bring this up? This is something that, I guess the left is saying, they hear this, get rid of the Department of Education. And so here's a guy called Mike the Mad Scientist. And I guess he put this up there on social media. And he says, when you're trying to save the Department of Education, but accidentally make the best case for eliminating it. So he put somebody else's post up there that says, oh, by the way, middle schoolers can't read, high schoolers can't write a proper essay, college students can't differentiate a scholarly based article versus propaganda, and adults can't tell when a picture is AI. But sure, get rid of the Department of Education. LOL. So this is the current state of things, and they don't realize that, hey, whatever this Department of Education is, it isn't working. So, anyway, go ahead.
Well, just what to say. All his points are good. I agree with everything he said, but then he contradicts himself at the very end with point 11. We're going to send education back to the states. So if you're sending it back to the states, education is going to look very different in California than it is in Texas. Right? It's going to look very different in Massachusetts than in Kansas. But I don't know. What do you say? I mean, it's like you can't have it both ways. If you want this education to go back to the States, your first 10 points, I mean, if he wants to cheerlead for that, fine. But he made it sound like dogma. Like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Well, you can't do that if you're sending it back to the States. I mean, anyway, yes.
I mean the whole Trump 10 points. I mean, it's not the ideal. It's not the getting rid of government rule in education altogether and letting the marketplace determine where we send our kids to school. It is not that, but it's a step in the right direction. Hopefully, to get to the ideal of abolition, as Larry termed it.
Right.
So I think it's a good start in the right direction. And if we could further that in the next few years or whatever, in terms of where we could truly get the government out of education, I think then we'll achieve something good for our children and for the next generation.
Yeah,
Sure.
no, his ideas are fine. I agree, Leon. I mean, all those things are, I don't disagree with one thing he said, but it's once again, if he wants to leave it up to the states, not every state is going to buy into that. I live in California, and it's in California, the California Teachers Association considers itself the fourth co-equal branch of government. This was said by Don Parada, a state Democrat senator.
Yes.
And he's right, they're incredibly powerful, and they're not going to let this happen. So, and as I said, Texas, okay, other states, sure, but not California. So,
Yeah.
Well, I guess this is where the fight must continue. That even if Trump is successful in removing the federal role in the education, especially in K through 12 education. If he's successful in that, the fight will continue then at the state levels. That so how much? I mean, just like you, we live in California. Jason have kids in school. I have a grandson in the public schools. So the fight will have to continue, I guess, at the state level.
Yeah. And there also too there were things, just as a libertarian, it kind of rubbed me just a little bit as overly prescriptive, when he says bring back prayer in schools, which I'm perfectly fine with radical choice, and if you want to go to a school that has prayer, absolutely, but the idea that somehow that's going to be directed by government it's also a little bit worrying, saying we're going to bring back prayer in school.
Whose prayer? Is it a Muslim prayer, a Jewish prayer, a Christian prayer, a Hindu prayer? I mean,
it's a valid point. I mean, I grew up in another country, but I grew up, we used to have prayer in school. We used to pray in school, as a matter of fact. And I did spend 1 year in a Catholic school, and of course, prayer was a big part of it. But even in government school, most of my life I went to a government school. We used to pray. They used to love us.
Where did you grow up, Leon?
In Trinidad, the Caribbean.
Trinidad. Okay, I detected a Caribbean accent there. Isn't that where Stokely Carmichael came from?
Yeah, I know. He's well known in Trinidad.
Not comparison.
Well, I will tell you, on this whole, prayer in the schools thing, I do think we definitely should all be praying for the schools because of the way they've been doing it. And, this is one of the things I think is a good segue to the next topic. And Larry had an article that was came out, it looked like middle of last year, but it said the Republic is asleep. And I thought it was kind of an interesting article because he talks about, this being just one of the sort of metrics about how bad our school system is, but the fact that it's out there, it's supposed to be, I guess, educating us about government or what the purpose of government is, and almost every kid who's going through school knows less than migrants who have to pass a citizenship test, which is just absolutely insane. Leon, maybe you could bring up the article real quick too, just so people can see which one we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, 96% of immigrants, as I wrote, seeking naturalization, could pass a test where only 13% of Americans could pass it. If that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what does.
Yes. I mean,
what as I wrote, 1 in 4 could say why American colonists fought a war against Great Britain. I mean, this is basic stuff. This is not esoteric insider information. You have to dig deep to find out. This is common stuff that you should be learning, like in 3rd grade or maybe 4th grade. Period. I mean, this is, I don't know. I have no words for this.
If I could just give a little personal story here. So I have done well, I'm an American citizen. I became so in 1993, and I had to go through that. I did the civic test that you have to pass before you could be before you could become an American citizen, before you could be sworn in as such. And I mean, quite frankly, the questions they answer are so simple. I knew most of the answers even before I came to the United States, quite frankly. All right, to tell you how simple these tests are. And if we have American citizens, I mean, born and raised here, going through the public school, and only 13% or 20% of them could answer those questions, could pass that test, I mean, we got a real problem. We really do. Seriously.
We do. I'm tearing up behind my smile here. Yeah, it's terrible. It's just terrible. We'll lose the country. I mean, how do you keep a country? We have no sense of history.
Exactly.
And you also brought up some points that I thought were kind of interesting, especially with the topics we talk about on this show, where we brought in a lot of people who are desperately trying to re-educate people about their protections in the Constitution to, keep this tyranny at bay that we're facing, and the fact that so many of them barely understand any of the protections that they have in the Constitution. It sounded like the best one was about 77% could name that they had freedom of speech, but 23% then didn't know that they had freedom of speech. I mean, that's like, and that's the best. And you're down to like a quarter or less on a lot of these other things, that.
Yeah, but you're not being fair, Jason. That they do know that they have a choice of gender.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whether they're a boy or a girl.
Yeah. And quite frankly, if we keep going the way we're going, I think California will get that into the Constitution.
Would not be surprised at all.
Yeah. But this all does kind of go back to the point that, we talked about the National Education Report Card a little bit, and some of what's going on in the schools. Larry had an article a little while back too about just some of these questions, I guess, that people are having trouble answering. And like you had this one question. Susan B. Anthony was a leader who helped, immigrants, to come to the U.S., or women win the right to vote, or older people. Anyway, these are basic, questions that most of us, I guess, who have a little bit of education can answer. But the idea that so many are doing so poorly, it does beg the question: what is the point of government saying that it needs to be control of education if it can't do any of these things? I'm kind of struggling with what's their argument, because to me it seems like, from a libertarian perspective, if you're saying government needs to do something, then you got to make the case that that's sort of like you have the burden of proof, I guess, why government should have that role. And if we can't even identify what it's supposed to be doing, I don't know. What's the point? It's just a jobs program.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, Jason. That's about what it is. I think the late great Abigail Thernstrom made that point, that it is a jobs program. Well, not always. There are some wonderful teachers, of course, but unfortunately, there are a lot of stinkers, and the stinkers have protections, and they won't lose their job. It doesn't matter. I mean, here in California, we have about 300,000 teachers. About 10 teachers a year out of 300,000 lose their jobs, and I think 8 of them lose it because they're criminals, maybe pedophiles or something like that. I think 2.2% of teachers, 2.2 teachers out of 300,000 lose their job every year. I mean, I have no words. It's just beyond disgraceful.
Yeah.
I know, Jason asked that question. I think, if we think about it, the motivations of the government vastly diverge from the motivations of parents. Parents want to take care of the kids. They want to educate their children. The government is only interested in control. That's all they want. They want to control our lives. Look at what the public schools have become now. The public schools are nothing but propaganda centers now. That's what they are. Teaching kids, they're not teaching them reading, writing, and arithmetic, but they could teach them critical race theory. They could teach them about transgenderism. They can teach them all this other garbage that does nothing to further the quality of life. So the motivations of the two entities involved, the government on one hand, parents on the other, are totally divergent.
But I'm glad you brought up parents, Leon, because too many parents are still asleep. They just send their kids off to public school. When I grew up back in the 50s, 1950s, my mother was reasonably assured that I was getting a good education, and I did. There was no politics. I learned, one and one and two, and how to put a sentence together, and the difference between a noun and a verb. But now things are very different, and too many parents just don't get it. That is changing. There are groups like Parents Defending Education, Moms for Liberty, which are just making parents wake up. And these groups are very, very important, because until parents do, the system has no motivation to change.
Indeed. One of the things, to me, one of the biggest threats we have to our existence as a nation, as a country, is complacency of the adults in the room. Okay, if we are not holding our government accountable for their actions or their conduct, and we are just complacent, we're just going from one day to the next without realizing what exactly is going on, without trying to educate ourselves of their actions and their conduct. This is what will destroy us as a country, is our complacency, and eventually our dependency upon government is what will destroy us. And we are heading in that direction. And I hope to God Donald Trump will do something to at least steer the ship away from that outcome.
Yeah. Well, Leon, I thought you really hit the nail on the head too when we were talking about what's the purpose, and you said indoctrination is what you were kind of leading to. And that's actually the next topic I wanted to get into. But if you're watching on public access, even though we got a lot of great stuff that we're going to continue to talk about here, but you're going to have to catch us online, because we're out of time on public access. So jump online, catch this conversation and many others that we've had with lots of interesting people fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. So let's get back to the topic. And Leon, can you bring up the visual here? Because Larry had an interesting article. It just published right about, looks like on the election date, I think November 5th. That was just after the election, I think. So,
okay.
Oh, day before. Okay,
November 5th.
I lost track of dates, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's been exciting times. It's hard to keep. It's moving so fast. It's blinding. But anyways, I mean, it's an important point. Is that it seems like the stuff that we are getting out of the schools it's a vehicle for people who are trying to control us, to further indoctrinate our kids into all kinds of ideas that be bizarre and then some. In fact, we did have a couple of quick videos to show. One is we showed a longer version of this the last time we had you on the show, but there's this thing that came out recently in California called woke math, and I'm not sure if we put a stake through the heart of that yet or not, but Leon, maybe you could play KOL 2. That's a little clip on woke math.
California has adopted a new mathematics curriculum that critics are calling woke math. The framework focuses on big ideas, social justice, and equity, according to supporters. Critics, however, say the focus should be numbers. National correspondent William Lajeunesse takes a look from Los Angeles.
Let's see if my math matches your math.
A controversial math curriculum taking root in California as reformers this month overcame strong opposition from math and science educators.
It definitely will not help them learn math better. I've been teaching math for 43 years, and I can say with certainty that this will cause a great deal of confusion and set students back.
7 divided by 7, let's go.
The new framework urges teachers to focus on historically marginalized people and take a justice-oriented perspective by changing course material with less emphasis on problem solving.
Sounded like it's more like creating problems than problem solving. That's what they're going to get to.
Yeah, for part of my career, I was a math teacher. I was an elementary school teacher. I taught everything. And, if a kid said that 2 and 2 is 5, I'd say, I'm sorry, you're wrong. 2 and 2 are 4. Now, if you do that, I think you're a racist.
Yeah.
You're deemed a racist, I should say. No, it's nuts. I mean,
yeah.
And once again, parents need to wake up to the fact that this is what their kids might be getting in school. And if you do, just one more thing about parents, if you do send your kid to a public school, talk to them literally every day about what they learned in school. And, did your teacher talk about anything that made you feel uncomfortable? Did your teacher say anything, blah, blah, blah. I don't have all the questions, the proper questions, but the questions that parents need to talk to their kids about literally every day.
Indeed. And this just gets back to the rot that we see going on in the public schools right now. I mean, when I was growing up, you think I could go tell my father, some teacher mark me, give me knock me off some points because I said 2 and 2 equal to 5 when the correct answer was 4. You think I could go tell my father that the teacher is wrong or the teacher have a problem because they didn't accept my wrong answer? What that man would have done to me, I would have probably still feeling on my ass, quite frankly. Yeah. Because back in those days, okay, I was 14 years old when I started to learn calculus, okay? And you think I could go home and tell him, well, I can't learn this because of all of this woke garbage that's going on today, okay? That man was obsessed in educating his children, and he did a damn good job at it, quite frankly, even though he himself was not very educated, okay? I mean, at least formally educated. And this is what is happening. Parents are not paying attention. Larry, you're so right about this. Parents are not paying attention. And if it's the one good thing that came out of COVID, the one good thing was parents got to see what these teachers are teaching their children. And it did bring about a little bit of awakening, but we need a lot more because we need to change this ship. Otherwise, we are going to destroy the next generation in this great land of ours.
It's an important point, Leon. And yeah, COVID did that. And also a lot of parents started homeschooling at that point. And many, I don't have the exact numbers, but many found that they could do it. Yes. So they just said goodbye to their public school. So yeah, that was one of the few blessings of COVID.
Yeah, indeed, yes. Yeah.
Well, it is funny that you guys talk about, how we got to see more of what was going on during COVID, because one of the other things that groups like places like California, jurisdictions like California seem to be doing is to double down on not letting parents see what's going on. And so Larry talks about that in some other articles he had late this year. California adopts 6 million children. And Leon, maybe you could bring this visual up. And in that, one of the issues is this law, AB 1955. And so in that, and we've talked about that on this show a little bit, but where teachers are getting in trouble in places like California, if they see that a kid is struggling with issues like gender identity or something, and they go to tell the parents that their child is struggling with something. And, this is a really serious issue, because this used to be considered a mental health issue until just recently, when by the magic of government, it wasn't a mental health issue suddenly. But we have a video that I wanted to share. We've shared this on other shows before, but this is not just happening in places like California. This I believe this was in Maine, I think. But we showed this video before that the Goldwater Institute, I guess, had, where they represented a woman who found out that her school was propagandizing her child without her knowledge and keeping that information from her. So Leon, maybe you could play KOL 3 real quick.
just always been able to come to me and talk to me about things. At the end of her 7th grade year, she began talking with a school social worker, but they did transfer her to this other social worker who I had never met, and he never reached out to me to tell me that he was going to be working with my kiddo. And it just, everything about it felt like the goal was to remove me from any sort of conversation surrounding my daughter's mental health. One day, family affair, we were cleaning my daughter's bedroom and we discovered a breast binder in her bedroom. And so I had a conversation with her and asked her where it came from. She finally came out and told me that the school had given it to her, and more precisely, the school social worker. It hurt as a mom to know that she was keeping a secret, but I think it hurt even more to know that adults were encouraging her to keep these secrets. It really makes you wonder what other things are occurring in your schools. It really makes you question everything.
And again, that was a snippet from a longer video, so you can go to the Goldwater Institute and find that. But I mean, this is kind of what we're finding, is that, you know, this bizarre stuff is happening with our kids, and the school wants to hide it from us, which is absolutely nuts.
We used to call that child abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, and now it's the norm. At least in California, it is.
Yes.
Probably not in Oklahoma or Texas, but out here, yeah. AB 1955 is just, there just seems to be no limits that California won't sink to. It's really disgraceful.
Yeah.
And you know, this kind of furthers the point of removing government from its involvement in education, because what we are seeing here we are, the government is trying to separate children from their parents. You know, we have this big long story that we are always told in the left-wing media. Oh, when these migrants come across the border, they are separated from, parents are separated from their children. On and on we go about this thing, crying about it, especially that fool from New York, AOC, about separating kids from their parents. And look at what is happening in our public schools, right below our nose, right below it. They're separating children from parents. And AOC is not concerned about that. The left is not crying about that. No, they're not crying about that. But let a migrant cross the border, and all of a sudden, oh my goodness gracious, this is such a disgraceful thing. This is madness.
Well said, Leon. It is insanity.
Yeah. Well, and just to kind of hammer home what the difference would have been in this election had it gone the other way, Leon, maybe you could bring up the visual, but this is you know, a story that came out last year once they nominated Tim Walz, and the idea that in Minnesota they wanted to put tampons in the boys' bathrooms. And now it's funny too, because this shows the I guess duplicity of the media in all of these things as well, because, you know, CNN is apparently doing a fact check in this article on this, and apparently they're upset, not that, you know, it's not true that tampons were popping up in boys' bathrooms, you know, being put there, but because the law didn't specifically say they had to be in boys' bathrooms, they had to be anywhere where a child who identified as having a menstrual flow would need it. So, and it was up to the school to figure that out, apparently. But so therefore, it's okay, apparently, according to CNN. You know, this is not a thing.
It doesn't help Walz that he bears an incredible resemblance to Don Rickles, especially in that picture. I mean, and yeah, I mean, yeah, they didn't call him Tampon Tim for nothing.
Yes.
No, I'm sure he caused Camel a few votes because people realized how whacked out he is.
Oh,
well,
yes.
apparently, too, they were trying to argue that, and I can understand they say, hey, look, anything that keeps a kid from learning, and if this is an impediment, but yeah, my gosh, we're getting into the idea that if one kid who has likely some mental health problems is claiming he needs tampon, that's the big now savior of children's reading skills, to make sure we have tampons and all of it.
We used to call that gender dysphoria. I mean, it's a problem, you know, and my heart goes out. There are a few, literally, you know, point something % of children who do have this issue. but it's a mental health issue that needs to be dealt with, not celebrated, and not putting tampons in boys' room. I mean, it's nuts.
Exactly.
And most Americans know this, at least as of now.
Yes.
I don't know how many school age kids know it, but parents know it.
Yeah.
Parents in
But
America.
but I'm sorry. But this is just a point. It's just a point that this gender dysphoria is a real thing. Nobody's, at least I'm not arguing that point. And I think most people are not arguing the point. Gender dysphoria is real. The issue that we have is how they're trying to treat, how the left and many of the people in the public schools are trying to treat this problem.
Yeah.
And they're
The
trying
science is what
science, yes, all of a sudden, they want to determine what science is when they have no
Yeah.
skills in making that determination. They are not mental health counselors. They do not understand the nuances involved with this whole concept or this condition. But yet, thank you for that quote from Thomas Sowell. That's just the point. They have become amateur psychologists and sociologists, and they think they could guide the life of our children better than parents can. You know, this is insane. You wake up in the morning and seem like the world have gone mad and upside down, and you don't know if up is down or if a boy is a girl or girl is a boy. This is what these people are trying to push on our children.
Yeah. I just thought Thomas Sowell should weigh back in again from the beginning of the show. But yeah, it's just absolutely nuts. But I guess this does take us back to the importance of school choice and what happened on the ballot, and that takes us to another article that Larry was writing back in August on voting for school choice on election day is what the article was called. And I'm curious just to find out, kind of what's the update on where we're at with school choice. I mean, are things continuing to progress? Because I know a year ago, everything seemed very optimistic, and I think it's probably optimistic now. Just curious, I hear it from the expert here. I guess things still positive.
Yeah, I don't have the article. I wrote about that. In fact, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there were a few setbacks. But it was basically like in Colorado, for example. I mean, in 3 states were harmed because either the law was poorly written or they were outspent. I mean, there are solid reasons, but basically over the country, school choice did well in Texas and several other places. And at this point, there are well, I mean, before the election, I don't have the exact election results. I'm sorry, but 32 states have implemented some sort of private school choice program, and serving over 1 million people, and 40% of students nationwide are eligible to participate. That's the good news. The bad news is that 60% aren't. But things are moving. As somebody once said, that school choice it's like this huge ocean liner. Things are pointing in the right direction, but it's very slowly. I mean, nothing radical. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and have 100%, universal school choice, but it is moving in the right direction.
And for those of you who are confused about which of those are the states that are really heading in the right direction, so Larry mentions 12 states in his article. So we have Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Utah, and West Virginia. So these are the states that are sort of leading the charge into the next generation of education to get us more competition and get rid of some of these horrible ideas.
I would just like to give a shout out to a group called EdChoice. They are the go-to group if you want information about what states, what programs they have, what the programs are, what the programs are not. I would urge you to go to EdChoice. I think it's edchoice.org. Or you can just do a search for the title, but it's that is the preeminent group of school choice in the United States.
Yeah, I think is that Corey DeAngelis who spearheads that, or is that?
He was with the Americans for Children.
Okay.
Yeah, and he had a few issues which we don't need to get into here, and he was let go, and he's with another group now. But yeah, the AFC is probably almost as good, and they're real cheerleaders and very pro school choice.
Yeah. Well, and this is part of the thing, and as far as from a sort of a libertarian mentality, why school choice is so much better than the others is because it brings in competition. I mean, literally, we're not guaranteeing that every school is going to be perfect. What we're guaranteeing is that you'll have a lot of choices, and therefore, over time, the best stuff will rise to the top. Just like when you go to the grocery store, if there's a horrible brand of bread, it disappears from the aisle eventually.
Yeah, if you remember back in the 80s, with telephones, it was Ma Bell, period.
Yes.
And the phones, were expensive and they weren't very good, but they had no competition. All of a sudden, phones, they were decentralized, deregulated. All of a sudden, the service got better. It got cheaper. Yes, competition works. Even in education, it works everywhere. It works in food. You go to a supermarket and the vegetables are bad, and the food and the cans are past their due date. You don't go there. You go to another supermarket. Why can't you do that with schools?
Yeah.
And they say, oh, there's no accountability. BS, because parents are the ultimate deciders. A parent wants to send their kid to a progressive school. I might not like it, but that's their business. It's their kid. I would send my kid to a school that has more traditional values and teaches things the way I grew up, and etc.
Yeah.
And it's, once again, it comes back to competition. And if a school's not doing a job, no parent's going to send the kid there, and the school will close.
Exactly. And that's how it should work, right? In the marketplace of ideas or marketplace of products, the bad ones fall away and the good ones rise to the top. That's how it works. And it should be no different in education. You guys are absolutely correct.
Yeah. And ultimately, like Larry's saying, student alumni are the metric, right? Over time, parents are going to see how kids are doing, other people's kids did, and that's how they're going to make their choices eventually. So
right, and it also will get I think once again, parents have become are, over the years, a little too trusting, and if they have a choice, they will have to get more involved, because you can send your kid to this school that does this and that school that does this, and the third school does the other, and you have a choice. So the parent's going to have to take more interest, right? If you have a choice. So it's just common sense.
It's funny because, when we think about school competition or school choice and the competition, we're thinking of real metrics like how kids are doing and, what's going to happen in the future. Well, apparently in big government land of monopoly, I guess what competition might mean is ideas like bribing children to attend school. And so Larry had an article on that in September of this last year, where he talks about how the Oakland school district here, I guess they decided the way to get better success is you pay the kids to show up.
Yeah, it's the equitable design project, and they give kids $50 every Friday for showing up. And if high school is a tardy, cut class or miss school entirely, no money for you. Was it a tube Nazi? But that's another story. Anyway, $50. Yeah, that's how bad it's gotten. They're getting a free service, and not only are they getting a free service, they're paying for it.
Yeah.
What? Maybe like going to a local supermarket buying food, and they give you money to go there.
Yeah.
They might give you a sale, a few bucks off as an enticement. They're not going to give you money.
Well, it's even worse. I mean, they take money out of your pocket and then they hand it back to you if you take the product.
I'm telling you, this is the best thing next to sliced bread. Come on.
Well, I did want to mention too, if you're in California, there are resources out there. There's this My School Choice website, and I guess it has resources for any state, but it does help you to find some of these things and how you might weigh some of the different choices out there as they exist, because it's not, like I said, it's not uniform across all the states like we've talked about. And California is not one of the better ones.
no private option out here. But I mean, the main form of school choice in California is charter schools. We have a very robust charter school program, that's your school choice here. Obviously, you can educate your kids at home or in a micro school, but yeah, if you're talking about public schools, it's either traditional public schools or charter schools.
Okay. Well, we're almost about out of time, and so now it's about the time in the show where we get to something crazy somebody has said out there. It's our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, and since we just passed Thanksgiving, this is one of those things that was happening with our election. Aside from the craziness around education, some of the people out there are so, I guess, cultified, I guess, on all this stuff that they really think that they should essentially cut ties from their relatives over who they voted for. In fact, there was this Fox article here, and Leon, maybe you could bring that up. Essentially, he said, "Sounds like a cult. Sociologist rips leftists calling to cut off Trump family members during the holidays." And so, certainly, you had groups like The View and others. But we actually had a few real quick video clips here of Joy Reid on MSNBC, and this is precisely representative of what we're talking about. So, Leon, can you play KNP1?
Segment we did here on the Readout last week, in which a Yale-trained psychologist counseled those who are distraught about the results of the presidential election and frankly frightened over the prospects for their own lives because of it, that they do not owe the people who voted for the very things they're terrified of their time over the holidays.
There is a push, I think, just a societal norm that if somebody is your family, that they are entitled to your time. And I think the answer is absolutely not. So if you are going to a situation where you have family members, where you have close friends who have voted in ways that are against you, like what you said, against your livelihood, and it's completely fine to not be around those people and to tell them why.
So she also had just a little bit more too, Joy Reid did, to add on to this about what she thought of Trump voters. So Leon, can you play KNP2?
Cue the people who just 2 weeks ago were screaming, "Let's go, Brandon," and cheering as J.D. Vance called Vice President Harris the trash he was going to take out. Now yelling, "Why can't we all come together?" Really?
So that was kind of her take on how terrible the other side was and why they needed to separate. But I also wanted to play this video clip as well of the commander-in-chief on that side and what he was saying right before the election. So, Leon, can you play KNP3 real quick?
And just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
So, I mean, there you have it. I mean, the left literally calling all of the other side garbage and then saying that, hey, these people don't like us. We need to not go to Thanksgiving. I mean, it's just absolutely nuts. You guys have any thoughts on this?
It is nuts, but why am I not surprised?
Yeah.
Considering the sources, I mean, yeah, it is nuts, but that's the country we live in at this time, and well, hopefully the next 4 years will bring us back to sanity. Hopefully. I'm not holding my breath, but I certainly hope so.
I know we are joking about this, Jason, and we should joke. I mean, people like Joy Reid is just a source of great humor all the time. I mean, we have played her many times on this show. But I want you to think about one serious thing out of these clips that you have there shown. The woman who was providing the advice to us about what we should do at Thanksgiving is a child psychologist or psychiatrist at Yale University. This woman is supposedly an educator, a child psychiatrist or psychologist, whichever one it was. I don't remember exactly. This represents the kind of scary people that we have in our universities and our public schools that are supposedly educating and trying to heal our children. This is scary stuff when you think about it.
And this all brings back one other point too, and this is, as libertarians, we are always on the wrong side of an election. I mean, we almost never get what we're after during the election, which is more liberty. I mean, they're always pushing new things at the expense of our liberty. And it just, it occurs to me, if you're somebody who gets so upset over who wins an election that you won't see your family, that's a good sign government has gotten too big, and it's gotten into too many areas of your life that you'll separate yourself from your family depending upon which way an election goes.
Yeah, well, I think it's very telling. I don't know if it's a good thing. I mean, if you see it, oh my God, this is what we've come to, and then you change, it's a good thing. But if you just go with it, it's obviously not a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. Talk about people needing, those people who are willing to separate themselves from their family because of how that person voted or didn't vote or whatever. I mean, these people need to go sit on a psychiatrist. I mean, a real psychiatrist. They need to go sit on a psychiatrist's couch. That's what they need to go do.
Yeah, and don't expect your teacher to be that psychologist, as Thomas Sowell told us at the beginning.
You better check out your psychologist carefully too, because who knows what their agenda is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But Larry, I know you got to go. So are there any last words you want to leave the audience with? And Leon, maybe you could bring up his webpage again so everybody can see that. It's ctenhome.org. So that's where you can go to the California Teachers Empowerment Network, and also go to For Kids and Country for all of his articles. You can also find them published on other places too that carry his stuff.
Yeah, American Greatness and Front Page and a few other places. But anyway, I just want to thank you both. It's always a joy to be with you. And all I can say is wake up, people, because things have not been moving in the right direction. We don't know what the next 4 years will bring, but ultimately the voters and parents still are the ultimate deciders, and just wake up, America.
Indeed.
Awesome.
Yes, indeed.
And if you're watching and before the next show next week, if here we have somebody who's working to educate people about how they can get a little more liberty in education. We've had other people on who have demonstrated for liberty, who are running for school boards, who are running for other local spots. But think about what you can do in your community to help liberty out, because they're coming for it full force. And we're not going to get to keep liberty unless everybody takes a stand. So think about what you can do in your community. Until the next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.